After last night's WNBA draft, it does seem that Raven Johnson is the talk of the town after the Indiana Fever drafted her number 10. My immediate reaction was that this was not the best fit for the Indiana Fever, but today I am turning the page, I am diving in, and I want to analyze Raven Johnson a little bit more for the Indiana Fever.
A WNBA analyst has completely flipped her stance on the Indiana Fever, selecting Raven Johnson at number 10, initially calling it a poor fit in terms of timing, role, and roster needs. But after digging deeper into Johnson's defensive impact, especially recalling how she held Caitlin Clark to 5'4", 20 shooting in college, the perspective has shifted towards seeing real potential in the pairing. Because Johnson's elite perimeter defense could actually complement Clark's offensive brilliance in a way that balances both ends of the floor, making this less about redundancy and more about strategic contrast, which raises a compelling question. Are the Fever quietly assembling a dominant two-way backcourt built on defense and playmaking balance? Or did they just add a non-shooting guard next to their franchise offensive engine, potentially complicating spacing and offensive flow?
Very well. So while I did get my thoughts off on Raven Johnson as not being the perfect fit for the Indiana Fever at this point in time, I decided to take a look. And I know Raven Johnson pretty well. I know her game pretty well, but I do want to talk about some of the upside to drafting Raven Johnson to the Indiana Fever and what she can potentially bring. And you have to remember the Indiana Fever had the number 10 pick in the draft, and the number 10 picks in the draft don't usually make huge impressions on teams. And Raven Johnson does have championship pedigree. She did play an integral part to South Carolina this season. And yes, she kind of ished.
The Indiana Fever taking Raven Johnson with the 10th pick initially sparked confusion and concern, as many saw it as an awkward fit given the team's current structure. But once you move past that first reaction and actually evaluate the decision more closely, there's a case to be made that this move carries real upside, which is exactly the direction one WNBA analyst took after her own negative first impression, choosing to dig into Johnson's skill set instead of settling on surface-level criticism. And what she found was a more nuanced picture, one where Johnson's defensive intensity, versatility, and ability to impact the game without needing high offensive usage could potentially complement the Fever's core pieces, suggesting that while the fit may not look perfect on paper, it might make more sense within a broader, more balanced team-building approach.
Ball thing work. And if Raven Johnson's game does translate from college to the pros, which is a big if because there's a big leap and a big level up there, I can see Raven Johnson being definitely an asset a few minutes off the bench and definitely somebody to develop as a backup point guard for Caitlin, a solid backup point guard for Caitlin.
The initial concern around the Fever drafting Raven Johnson at number 10 was completely understandable. This is a team that already addressed its backup point guard spot with Ty Harris, and with a roster that leans guard-heavy and lacks consistent size outside of players like Aaliyah Boston and Monique Billings, using a top 10 pick on another guard felt like it didn't solve the more pressing issue of length against bigger opponents. But that perspective starts to shift once you look at Johnson beyond the label of another point guard, because she brings something very specific and impactful to the table as an elite perimeter defender who played a key role in South Carolina's championship run. And while her offensive struggles in the final stretch raised questions, her defensive performances, like locking down top players in high-pressure moments, highlight a skill set that isn't easily replaceable, which means if you evaluate her primarily through a defensive lens rather than a traditional positional one, the pick begins to look less like redundancy and more like a calculated move to add a high-level stopper who could elevate the team's overall balance.
2 seasons of development time away. Aaliyah Boston's injury has been on my mind extensively, which is why I was hoping for something big, someone big to come in and be able to give her some rest time. Now, Mo Billings definitely will be able to do that, and Maisha Hines-Allen will be able to step in for a few minutes and give AB some rest time should she need some in case her injury isn't fully healed. I really hope it is.
With the 10th pick, expectations are usually modest. Most players taken in that range aren't projected to make an immediate, franchise-altering impact. So when someone with Raven Johnson's defensive pedigree and championship experience is still on the board, the conversation shifts from perfect fit to pure value, especially in a situation where the Fever may have preferred another option earlier, but had to adjust when that player was taken. making Johnson a logical choice as the best available talent rather than a redundant piece. And what truly strengthens this pick is the defensive upside she brings, highlighted by her performance against Caitlin Clark in the national championship, where she held one of the most dominant offensive players in college basketball to 5-4-20 shooting, a display of elite on-ball pressure and discipline that shows her ability to neutralize top-tier scorers, which directly addresses one of Indiana's biggest issues from last season, where Clark was frequently targeted defensively in pick-and-rolls and isolation sets, forcing her to carry a heavy load on both ends. So adding a player like Johnson creates a pathway for Clark to conserve energy and fully maximize her offensive brilliance without being constantly exposed on defense, ultimately pointing toward a more balanced and strategically protected system.
Johnson actually even being available at 10, and especially because Dugalich got taken at 9, I would guess that the Indiana Fever would have taken Dugalich and then saw that Raven Johnson was still available. So when you have a player of Raven Johnson's caliber available, I think the philosophy was take it and make it work. It's not like you want to pass on a player that's at like the top of the board because you have a projected starter in that position necessarily. And I think that Raven Johnson
Adding someone like Raven Johnson off the bench immediately lightens Caitlin Clark's defensive burden, because Johnson can take on the toughest perimeter assignments, whether it's quick, high-usage guards or primary ball handlers, using her elite point-of-attack defense to disrupt rhythm and limit penetration, which is exactly the kind of support Clark needs to stay fresh and fully locked in offensively. And while Johnson isn't known as a knockdown shooter, her steady improvement from three-point range shows she's put in the work to become at least a respectable threat, which becomes far more valuable when paired with Clark's gravity, since Clark naturally draws multiple defenders and creates wide-open looks for teammates, meaning if Johnson can consistently hit open shots at a decent rate, she doesn't need to be a primary scorer to make an impact. She simply needs to space the floor enough to keep defenses honest while delivering high-level defense on the other end, turning her into a balanced role player who complements the system rather than disrupting it. That's exactly the kind of role that wins games at a high level. A low-usage, high-impact player who fits seamlessly next to a superstar. And the scenario the analyst described highlights it perfectly. Caitlin Clark collapses the defense with a drive, forces help, kicks it out to Raven Johnson on the perimeter, and Johnson knocks down the open shot. A simple, repeatable action that doesn't require her to be elite offensively, just reliable enough to make defenses pay for ignoring her, which becomes even more dangerous when paired with her defensive presence on the other end. And while concerns about size and length are valid given the Fever's guard-heavy roster with Aaliyah Boston as the primary interior anchor and players like Monique Billings and Alyssa Smith providing support rather than dominant physicality, this isn't a team built to overpower opponents anyway. It's built on speed, spacing, and backcourt versatility, and they've already shown that a smaller, quicker lineup can compete at a high level by leaning into pace and skill rather than traditional size. So instead of seeing Raven Johnson as adding to a weakness, the more compelling view is that she reinforces the team's identity while addressing a critical defensive gap. They made it work by leaning into pace, spacing, and allowing Caitlin Clark to operate as the offensive engine. So the idea that adding Raven Johnson somehow disrupts that formula doesn't really hold up when you look closer, because at 5 feet 8 inches, she's actually bigger than some of the guards they relied on before, while already bringing a higher defensive ceiling than anyone they had at that position last season. And if her shooting reaches a level where defenses can't completely ignore her, she slides naturally into the same small ball identity rather than conflicting with it, which means the real question isn't fit but translation. Whether her elite college defense carries over against faster, stronger, and more skilled WNBA competition. And while that uncertainty is real, it's also exactly what you expect at the 10th pick, where teams are betting on upside rather than certainty. And Johnson offers more upside than most players available in that range because of her defensive instincts, championship experience, and proven ability to impact games without needing the ball. And what strengthens that case even further is her mentality, shown by how she responded to being cut from the 2023 USA basketball team by doubling down on her development instead of fading, improving her weaknesses and returning sharper, which aligns perfectly with the kind of competitive mindset teams value. And her early comments after being drafted, expressing excitement about playing alongside Clark. Respect for her winning approach and eagerness to reunite with Aaliyah Boston while committing to defense, effort, and doing whatever it takes to win come across as authentic and grounded, reinforcing the idea that this isn't just a talent bet, but a culture fit as well.